Most people think modern compost is the gold standard for feeding soil, but farmers in the 1800s knew something better. These methods weren't abandoned because they failed. They were banned because society changed, regulations tightened, and newer industries pushed synthetic fertilizers. But the results? They still outperform what most gardeners use today. Today, I'm going to show you 5 powerful soil-building techniques that were used for centuries across Europe, Asia, and America. Methods that created darker, richer, more fertile earth than compost alone ever could. If you're new here, welcome to Zero to Purpose, where we take simple, hands-on steps to live more creatively, sustainably, and intentionally. There's no fancy equipment needed here, no expensive products. Just time-tested wisdom that still works. Grab a tea, settle in, and let's uncover what history tried to erase. Item 1. Biochar, charred wood amendment. This is biochar, partially burned wood or plant material that's been charred, not fully turned to ash. And this is important because while compost breaks down within a season or two, biochar stays in your soil for decades. It creates a permanent fertility layer that keeps working year after year. Farmers in the 1800s used it to revive exhausted fields, and today scientists are rediscovering why it was so effective. Think of biochar like a sponge made of carbon. When you add it to soil, it doesn't just sit there. It actively holds on to water and nutrients that would otherwise wash away with rain or watering. It has millions of tiny pores that create habitat for beneficial bacteria and fungi. These microbes colonize the biochar and form partnerships with plant roots, delivering nutrients more efficiently than plants could access on their own. The inspiration comes from something called terra preta, Amazonian dark earth created by indigenous people over 500 years ago. Those soils are still incredibly fertile today, and researchers found that biochar was the key ingredient. Start. You'll need hardwood scraps. Things like oak, maple, or fruit tree trimmings work best. Avoid softwoods like pine because they contain resins that can inhibit plant growth. You're going to burn these pieces low and slow until they're charred black but not reduced to white ash. You can do this in a burn barrel with limited airflow or in a fire pit where you pull out pieces once they're charred. Once your wood is charred, break it into smaller pieces, about the size of a pea or small bean. Then comes the crucial step, charging the biochar. Place it in a bucket and soak it in diluted compost tea, liquid seaweed, or even just water mixed with a handful of finished compost. Let it sit for 1 to 2 weeks. This step is essential because raw biochar will actually pull nutrients from your soil initially if you don't preload it. Maintain. Mix your charged biochar into the top 6 inches of your garden beds at a rate of about 10 to 20% by volume. You don't need much. A little goes a long way. Do this once a year, and you're building a soil structure that will serve you for 5 to 10 years from a single application. Biochar reduces your watering needs by 18 to 30% because it holds moisture so effectively. It improves nutrient retention, which means your plants can access food over a longer period instead of losing it to leaching. And unlike compost that needs to be reapplied every season, one application of biochar benefits your soil for 5 to 10 years. You're building long-term fertility, not just feeding this season's plants. Here's a small tweak that makes a big difference. Always charge your biochar before adding it to soil. Skipping this step means the biochar will temporarily steal nitrogen and other nutrients as it tries to stabilize. Soaking it first loads those pores with beneficial nutrients and biology, so it starts giving back to your plants immediately instead of taking. This one might raise eyebrows, but it's the elephant in the room when we talk about banned soil methods. Night soil was the term for human waste that was collected, composted, and returned to agricultural fields. It was used for thousands of years across Asia, Europe, and early America. And this is important because it contained significantly higher nitrogen content than most animal manures, yet it was banned in the early 1900s due to disease outbreaks caused by improper handling, not because the method itself was flawed. Human waste contains roughly 0.5% to 1% nitrogen by weight, along with valuable amounts of phosphorus, potassium, and trace minerals that plants need. When this material is composted properly at high temperatures above 131 degrees Fahrenheit, pathogens are destroyed, and what remains is a rich, safe fertilizer. The key is heat and time. Modern research shows that when night soil is composted correctly, it performs as well as or better than farmyard manure in terms of plant growth and yield. Start. The modern equivalent of this practice is called humanure composting, and it's legal in many regions if you follow proper protocols. You'll need a dedicated composting system. This is not mixed with regular garden compost. The setup includes a collection system and a hot composting bin that can reach and maintain high internal temperatures. Do. Layer your material with high-carbon additions like sawdust, dried leaves, straw, or wood chips. The carbon-to-nitrogen ratio needs to be correct for the pile to heat up properly. Turn the pile regularly to aerate it and maintain those high temperatures. Your compost needs to stay above 131 degrees Fahrenheit for at least 3 consecutive days to kill harmful pathogens. After the hot phase, let the pile cure undisturbed for 12 to 18 months. Maintain. Monitor your pile temperature with a compost thermometer, especially during the initial hot phase. Keep the pile moist but not waterlogged. After the full composting period, the finished material should be dark, crumbly, and earthy smelling with no resemblance to the original inputs. Many people use this only on ornamental gardens or orchard trees, rather than vegetable beds as an extra precaution. This method produces compost that's as nutrient-rich as farmyard manure and closes the waste loop entirely. Instead of flushing valuable fertility down the drain and paying for its treatment, you're turning a disposal problem into a renewable resource. It's free fertility for life if you have the space and commitment to do it safely. And historically, regions that practiced this had some of the most productive agriculture in the world. Check your local regulations before starting. Some areas allow humanure composting for ornamental plants only, not edibles. Others have specific permitting or setback requirements. Following the rules keeps you legal and maintains good relationships with neighbors who might not understand the science behind proper composting.
If this is opening your eyes to what's possible with these old techniques, tap the like button so more people can find this information. And tell me in the comments, which method surprises you most? Or maybe you've tried one of these already and have experience to share. I love hearing what resonates with you and learning from what you're experimenting with. Your comments help me know what to cover next, so don't hold back. Let's keep this conversation going. Farmers in the 1800s regularly mixed wood ash, bone dust, and charcoal fines into their fields to create what they called improved earth. And this is important because these materials created self-fertilizing soil layers that darkened and enriched over time, building fertility with every application. This wasn't a one-time fix. It was a practice that compounded season after season. Wood ash from hardwood fires contains potassium, calcium, and trace minerals. It also raises soil pH gently, which is useful if you're working with acidic soil. Bone char, which is bone material that's been charred or ground into meal, releases phosphorus slowly over months. Phosphorus is critical for root development, flowering, and fruit set. When you combine these two materials, you're feeding both your plants directly and the soil biology that supports them. The minerals become available gradually rather than all at once, which prevents waste and leaching. Start. Save wood ash from your fireplace or fire pit, but only from untreated hardwood, never from pressure-treated lumber, painted wood, or charcoal briquettes that contain chemical additives. Store the ash in a dry container with a lid. Source bone meal from garden centers or farm supply stores. It's widely available and inexpensive. Do. Mix 1 part wood ash with 2 parts bone meal. This ratio balances the potassium from the ash with the phosphorus from the bone. Spread a thin layer, about 1/4 inch deep, over your garden beds before planting. Work it gently into the top 2 to 3 inches of soil. You're not trying to dig it deep. You want it in the active root zone where plants can access it. Maintain. Apply this mixture once per growing season. More is not better with wood ash. Over-application can raise pH too much and lock out certain nutrients. If you're already gardening in alkaline soil above 7.0, skip the ash and use bone meal alone. Test your soil pH every year or two so you know where you stand and can adjust accordingly. This combination strengthens root systems dramatically, which makes plants more drought-tolerant and better able to access nutrients. It improves flowering and fruiting because phosphorus is the energy currency plants use for reproduction. The slow release means your plants are fed consistently for 3 to 6 months from a single application. And if you've got tired, depleted beds that just aren't producing like they used to, this mixture can revive them within a single season. Test your soil pH before adding wood ash. If you're already above 7.0, you don't need the ash. Stick with bone meal alone. But if you're in acidic soil below 6.5, the ash does double duty. It feeds plants and gently corrects the pH toward neutral. That's why this combination was so popular historically. It solved multiple problems at once. This technique involves burying organic waste underground to ferment before reincorporating it into the soil. Farmers use this method to deal with food scraps, crop residues, and animal bedding. And this is important because fermentation generates microbial heat and creates humus faster than surface composting. It's also quieter, less visible, and doesn't attract pests the way open compost piles can. When organic matter ferments underground, it goes through anaerobic decomposition, breaking down without oxygen. This process preserves more nutrients than traditional aerobic composting because there's no evaporation or leaching. The fermentation introduces beneficial bacteria and fungi directly into the root zone where plants actually grow. It mimics the natural cycles you'd see on a forest floor where organic matter is constantly being incorporated into the soil by worms, insects, and microbial action. The heat generated during fermentation also helps break down tougher materials faster. Start. Dig a trench about 12 inches deep and as long as you need based on how much material you have. You can do this between rows in a garden bed or in a dedicated area that will become a planting zone next season. Add your kitchen scraps, garden waste, and plant trimmings. Avoid meat, dairy, and oils in this method. Stick with fruit and vegetable scraps, coffee grounds, tea bags, and plant-based materials. Do. Cover everything with at least 4 inches of soil. Tamp it down gently so there's good contact between the organic matter and the soil. Then leave it undisturbed for 4 to 6 weeks. The material will ferment underground, breaking down and inoculating the surrounding soil with beneficial microbes. You'll know it's ready when the trench has settled and the materials have broken down into dark, crumbly humus. Rotate your trenches seasonally so different sections of your garden benefit. One season you might trench the north end, next season the south, and so on. This distributes fertility evenly over time and prevents any one area from getting overloaded. You can plant directly into these enriched zones once they've had time to cure, and you'll see noticeably better growth compared to untreated areas. This method builds humus in place without the labor of hauling finished compost from a bin to your beds. It dramatically reduces odor and pest attraction compared to open compost piles because everything's buried, and it creates incredibly rich planting zones for your next season's crops. Plants grown in soil that's been inoculated this way show better disease resistance, stronger root systems, and higher yields because they're growing in biologically active soil. Add a handful of finished compost or garden soil as a starter culture when you're filling your trench. This introduces the right microbes immediately and speeds up the fermentation process. It's like adding yeast to bread dough. You're giving the process a head start instead of waiting for the right organisms to find their way in naturally. Here's the thing most people overlook when trying these methods. They all work because they balance carbon with nitrogen in specific ratios. This is the invisible thread connecting every technique we've covered today, and it's why these banned methods consistently outperformed basic compost. Carbon comes from brown materials, things like wood, leaves, straw, cardboard, and sawdust. Nitrogen comes from green materials, fresh plant matter, food scraps, grass clippings, and yes, animal or human waste. When you combine these in roughly a 30-to-1 ratio, 30 parts carbon for every 1 part nitrogen, you create the ideal environment for microbial activity. Too much nitrogen and your pile gets hot too fast, smells like ammonia, and loses valuable nitrogen to the air. You'll know this is happening if your compost smells sharp or rotten. Too much carbon and decomposition slows to a crawl. Your pile stays cool and materials take forever to break down. You'll see whole leaves or straw still intact months later. But when you hit that sweet spot around 30-1, magic happens. The pile heats up to the right temperature range, between 130 and 160 degrees Fahrenheit. At these temperatures, beneficial thermophilic bacteria thrive. They break down organic matter rapidly while killing weed seeds and pathogens. The pile doesn't smell bad because decomposition is efficient and complete. This ratio is why biochar needs to be charged with nitrogen-rich materials before use. It's why night soil was always mixed with carbon-heavy bedding like sawdust or straw. It's why bone meal and wood ash work so well together. They balance mineral content while supporting the right microbial activity. And it's why fermentation trenches need both food scraps and soil cover. You don't need to measure this precisely with a calculator. Just aim for rough proportions by volume. If you're adding a bucket of fresh green material, add 2 to 3 buckets of dried brown material. If things seem too wet or start smelling bad, add more carbon. If decomposition stalls, add more nitrogen. Understanding this one principle, carbon to nitrogen balance, will make you better at all forms of composting and soil building. It's the master key that unlocks why these old methods worked so reliably. So whether you try biochar and start charging your own charcoal, explore humanure composting where it's legal and appropriate, save your wood ash for spring applications, or experiment with fermentation trenches between your garden rows, these aren't complicated systems. They're patterns nature already uses. We've just forgotten them in the rush toward convenience and synthetic solutions. These methods were banned or abandoned not because they failed, but because our society changed. We moved to cities, adopted industrial agriculture, and lost touch with the cycles that sustained farming communities for millennia. But the principles are still sound, and the results still speak for themselves. Pick one idea from today and try it this season. Start small. Let it teach you something about your soil, your garden, and the way nutrients cycle through living systems. Drop a comment and tell me which method you're most curious about, or if you've tried any of these before. I'd love to hear your experience. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and join us here at Zero to Purpose, where we grow life, one simple, intentional project at a time. Thanks for being here. See you in the next one.